Tucked away in the shadow embrace of the Carpathian Mountains lays an isolated and remote village named Ebonvale. A village shrouded in ancient whispers, clinging to its primeval history as old as the gnarled trees guarding its borders. I have desired to study their culture multiple times through my career as an ethnographer and an author, but I never had the opportunity. My relentless pursuit of the obscure in free time, now that I had officially retired, finally paved way for me to truly enrich myself in the ways of the Ebonvale people. I've heard many tales over the years of their people, but even in the world of cultural studies, we have quite the rumor mill of old wives' tales, so it has always been a goal of mine to examine the town for myself and make some sense of the vague and peculiar stories. It has been said that many within the community have suddenly vanished without a trace. My hope is to find the answers to these disappearances, as no formal reports have ever been filed outside of this small and destitute community. And who knows, maybe I will finally become the best-selling author I've always wanted to become. The road to Ebonvale was a serpentine path, weaving through dense forests where sunlight seldom trespassed. There were no definitive roads, only a dirt trail that was broken by many footsteps. The winding and indistinct path had me turning in circles multiple times. I tried to follow my compass as best as I could, but on multiple occasions, it too seemed to have me wandering about aimlessly. The forest is so thick through the untouched thicket of the mountains, I quickly realized that this was not going to be a simple walk through the woods. Instead, I spent several nights camped out along my journey, with nothing more than a flashlight, writing books, a few changes of clothes, and some MREs. I feared even starting a fire for warmth, because I had heard rumors of the townspeople having a strong cultural attachment to fires and worship. It's important not to offend and be respectful when attempting to be embraced by civilization, especially when conducting research. "Hey stranger," a man said to me, interrupting my thoughts. I saw a man walking through the brush with a woman. The last thing I expected right now was a couple of people walking up to me on my campsite at night while I was vulnerable. As his machete swung high and true, came down with a swift motion to cut the last few tree branches in his way, I let out a sigh of relief as he came closer to me with his flashlight aimed directly at my sleeping bag. He introduced himself as Lorenzo and his wife Maria. They were apparently just hiking for fun, and this was their weekend getaway. Maria was a mother-turned-influencer, as she wanted to show women everywhere that they could make simple and lavish dishes while supporting her family of 5. Within an hour, I knew everything about their whole family as if I was a part of it. Nico was really good at soccer, while Isabella had a chess tournament that she had come in 3rd place. Apparently, there was one other kid who prevented a stalemate and finished the game within 6 well-thought-out moves. I went in on a long conversation about my dog shortly after that. My dog Claire was beautiful as I described. She was pretty much my daughter until I felt I was ready to have kids of my own. I knew I was very late at this stage in life, but I didn't care. I still wanted the family life with Elizabeth. I felt bad for not talking about her as much as I should. We had a fight right before I left, and it made me uneasy talking about my wonderful life, even though I had problems that needed mending. I said some things I shouldn't have, but sometimes I need my space, and I don't like feeling someone on top of me all the time and wanting confirmation of my love. I guess you could say I was trying to fix the mistakes I made in life, and leaving my home like the way I did left one more thing to add to my to-do list. After talking so much that night, I just listened and enjoyed their company before I would go back to keeping to myself. Our conversations were filled with family, plans, and what the future held. Life is definitely precious and should never be taken for granted. As the morning sun moved slowly across my face, paying attention to my eyelids, I woke up and saw that Lorenzo and Maria were gone. At that moment, I knew I had to do the same. After several grueling days in the forest, I had made my way to Ebonvale. Upon my arrival, a heavy mist clung to the village like a cloak, and the air was thick with the scent of burning wood. The architecture was a mosaic of medieval charm, each structure telling tales of the past with their time-worn stones and thatched roofs. The villagers of Ebonvale's faces were etched with the sort of resilience born from isolation. Their greetings were of short nods, but their eyes were flickering with the curiosity as they saw me, clearly the newcomer. At the village's heart stood Honora's Mill, an inn that looked weathered for centuries, its wooden sign creaking eerily as I entered. I found it odd for such an isolated village to even have a place for visitors to stay. I thought to myself, after several nights alone in the elements of Mother Nature, I was relieved to have a soft place to lay my head and water to bathe my sore body. Agnes, the innkeeper, was a woman of advanced years, her back bent but her eyes sharp as she welcomed me. A rare sight. A stranger has stumbled upon us. What brings you to Ebonvale, my dear? Stories, I replied, my gaze wandering over the inn's rustic interior adorned with the relics of the past. I'm here to unearth the tales buried in these mountains. Agnes offered a knowing smile, one that hinted at secrets unspoken. Ebonvale has many tales, my dear, but some are best left undisturbed, she warned with a grin, handing me the key to my room. I made the decision not to press her for information, since this was my first night and I didn't want to cause mischief so soon. As night fell, I lay in a bed that creaked with age and a small lantern burned next to a box of tissues on a table right next to the side of the bed. The wind outside whispered through the cracks, carrying with it faint indistinct murmurs. I assumed it was the rustling of leaves, yet a part of me trembled at the thought of something more, something darker in nature. To be so far removed from the outside world was like stepping back in time, hundreds of years back. This feeling brought with it an eeriness of feeling more connected with the past. The following morning, I ventured further into Ebonvale, my footsteps echoing on cobblestones worn smooth by time. The villagers went about their daily routines. Their interactions were short and their smiles were brief. In the center of the village stood an ancient oak tree, its branches knotted, under which old men sat, their conversations a tapestry of local lore. I approached them, introducing myself and my quest for knowledge. I was met with a mixture of suspicion and intrigue. You seek the stories of Ebonvale, one asked, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of years. Then you must know of the charcoal makers. The term struck a chord, a whisper of a legend I had stumbled upon in my research. Yes, the craftsmen of the famed Ebonvale charcoal, I affirmed, but I sense there's more to their tale. The old men exchanged glances, their faces momentarily clouded with unease as one of them blew their nose into a handkerchief. The charcoal makers are not mere craftsmen, another spoke, his voice riddled with annoyance. They are guardians of an ancient pact, a tradition that has sustained our people, but has cursed our village in equal measure. They are the reason as to how our village has been able to self-sustain itself for all of these years. My interest now piqued. I pressed for more information, but they fell silent, with their lips pursed and their eyes urging me to seek answers elsewhere. Their words, though brief, led me to at least believe that some of the rumors that I had heard of this place stemmed from some truth. Determined, I spent the next couple of weeks exploring Ebonvale, the sense of an unseen veil blanketing its truth growing with each passing day would not leave me. It was not until I encountered the village's outskirts that I came upon the kilns. Nestled in the clearing, away from prying eyes, stood rows upon rows of archaic kilns, their stones blackened by endless fires. Here, the charcoal makers toiled, their figures covered in cloaks, their movements deliberate and shrouded in a somber ritual that did not break pattern. As the evening fell quickly upon me, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. A sudden urge to sneeze came over me, and I bent down to bury my face in my knees and arms to cover the sneeze as much as I could. Looking up, I felt relieved that no one heard me, and I decided to leave and return to Nora's mill. I knew I was getting close after hearing the creaking sound of that old sign in front. I blew my nose, then shoved the piece of toilet paper back into my pocket and continued walking. Agnes stood there at the front desk, her expression grave. "You've seen the kilns," she said. Not a question, but a statement. My mind wondered, had I been followed? Who passed this information on to her? Or could she just sense it? "Then you must have questions," she said. I nodded, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. I decided to cut to the chase, as she seems to know how far along I am in my research. "Tell me about the charcoal makers," I urged. "What is this pact the old men speak of?" Agnes sighed, the weight of her years evident in her posture. She led me to a quiet corner of the inn, her eyes glancing around as if to ensure no unwanted ears were listening. "Tread lightly, for you will find the answers you seek," she said. "I have traveled far and wide to find this place. Please, I need answers," I said in a somewhat demanding voice. "As you wish, my dear." "The tale of the charcoal makers is as old as Ebonvale itself," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is said that long ago our village faced ruin. Crops failed, disease spread, and darkness loomed over us all. Out of desperation, the village elders made a pact with something ancient and unfathomable that dwelled within the forest. We dared not to journey there, but it was our last hope." She paused, her hands trembling slightly. "In exchange for our survival, we were to offer a tribute, not of gold or livestock, but of a far more sinister nature. The charcoal makers were formed, a group bound by blood oath to fulfill this grim obligation." This revelation sent a chill down my spine. "What tribute?" I asked, though a part of me dreaded the answer. "The bodies of the dead," she replied, her eyes clouded with sorrow. "And sometimes, when the dead were not enough, those on the brink of death, or the ones we deemed to be a nuisance to us, would pay us tribute." I struggled to process her words, the horror of it all clawing at the edges of my mind. "And the charcoal?" I managed to ask while fighting the urge to sneeze again. "The charcoal," Agnes continued, "is said to be imbued with the essence of those sacrificed. It burns with a heat and intensity unlike any other, a constant reminder of the price we paid for our existence." The pieces of the haunting puzzle began to fall into place. The peculiar nature of the charcoal, the whispers in the wind, the way the villagers looked at me, a stranger in their midst. Ebonvale was not just a village. It was a land bound to a legacy filled with darkness. The days that followed were a blur of haunting discoveries. I found myself drawn to the kilns, watching from a distance as the charcoal makers performed their somber duty. The smoke that rose from the kilns seemed to carry with it the silent screams of the lost, the air heavy with a palpable sense of mourning. I began to notice a sudden influx of hikers and tourists coming to Ebonvale, their faces bright with curiosity, unaware of the village's sinister underbelly. Some left soon after their arrival, but others that stayed too long began to show signs of a strange malaise. Their vitality seemed to wane, their eyes reflecting a dawning horror as the whispers, once only heard by my ears, began to invade their own. I too felt different after being here this long, but I feel it was my motivation to find answers that kept me going. That night, tormented by the secrets I had uncovered, I confronted the charcoal makers. I found them in their sacred clearing, the fire from the kilns casting an otherworldly glow on their cloaked figures. "Why?" I demanded, my voice raw with emotion. "Why continue this horror? You know deep down in your heart this is wrong." One of them, the leader I believe, stepped forward. His eyes, when he lifted his hood, were pools of endless anguish and grief. "We are bound by blood and curse," he said, his voice a hollow echo of despair. "To break the pact is to doom Ebonvale to the darkness that we once narrowly escaped. We are prisoners of our own survival." My heart started racing as his voice echoed in my ears, and I feared that everything I heard was true, and I would be next. I ran out of the clearing with a heavy heart, the weight of their curse bearing down on me. Ebonvale, for all its unusual charm, was a village lost to time and damned by its own desperation. I was left in shock of everything that I had learned. In the back of my mind I questioned, why was I able to leave so easily? They did not chase me, they did not call out for me to stop, there was no one sent after me to hunt me down. So many thoughts ran through my head. I felt that I would leave with more questions than I had come with. In my final days in Ebonvale, the village took on a ghastly aspect. The whispers were no longer just in the wind. They seemed to emanate from the very stones and trees, a chorus of the damned that only I could hear. I planned to leave, to escape the nightmare that Ebonvale had become for me. My body felt weaker and weaker. My eyes developed huge bags under them. My skin had a gray tint to it that resembled that of ash, and I have never had to blow my nose this many times before in my life. With each piece of toilet paper that I blew my nose into, only showed me how much soot was in my nostrils. I just wanted to go back home, my safe place, and leave this behind. I wanted a fresh start and a new career. But on the eve of my departure, a fierce storm descended upon the village, as if the land itself was conspiring to keep me here. In the heart of the tempest, I ventured out, drawn by an inexplicable force to the kilns. I had no control over my body. Something guided me as it knew exactly where it wanted me to go. One foot after another, my legs keep moving throughout the forest until I come across the kilns. There, amidst the roaring flames and the howling wind, I witnessed the horror that bound Ebonvale in its cursed pact. The charcoal makers, their faces twisted in agony, fed the kilns not with wood, but with bodies, some lifeless, others barely clinging to life. The realization that the charcoal that kept me warm during my stay was born of such unspeakable acts filled me with just revulsion and despair. I felt a strong, cold hand from behind lift my head slightly so that I could see the most horrendous act I had ever seen. My eyes became wide as I was not able to blink to rehydrate them. One of the charcoal makers grabbed Lorenzo by his neck and held him in the air with ease. His fist became tight as he raised it high above his head, almost as if he was savoring the moment. With an almighty force, his fist came down like that of a hammer directly in the center of Lorenzo's head, instantly leaving his body limp. Dropping him to the ground next to Maria's lifeless body, the rest of the charcoal makers started ripping his clothes off before putting him into the kiln. Maria was next. One of them picked her up by her neck like a rag doll and just threw her body into the kiln. Just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. Maria wasn't dead. It appeared like she was playing dead just to wait for an opportunity to run. It didn't work. Her screams overpowered the howling of the flames, and in an instant, I could feel her pain as I saw her try to grab the mouth of the kiln. Even from this distance, I could see her skin start to split and peel from her face as she suddenly became quiet. The screams stopped. With the flames roaring fast, it soon engulfed her body and you could no longer see her. Being burned alive was never a fear of mine until I saw it happen right in front of me. I just met them not too long ago. After having a long conversation with them, I felt as if I knew their whole family. What would Nico do without his dad coaching him and helping him get better at soccer? Would Isabella be the next Bobby Fischer? But more importantly, did Lorenzo and Maria come to Ebonvale on their own free will? Or were they hunted like game? So many questions filled my head as I saw my life flash before my eyes. My life cannot end this way. Damn my curiosity. There were so many things I have not done. I'm sorry, Claire. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for every fight we had. There were times I knew I was wrong, but I would not back down. My pride wouldn't let me. I'm sorry for not proposing to you for all of these years. We have been together for 10 years, and I have wasted every single one of them by not making you my wife. I just wish I would have told you where I was, or anyone. As I stood there, paralyzed by the scene before me, the leader of the charcoal makers approached me. His tall stature looked down upon me with his black, lifeless eyes. He just stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at me, trying to look deep into my soul. "You cannot leave," he said, his voice barely audible over the storm, but very commanding. "You came here with questions, and now I shall answer them. Our story is not one filled with happiness. We have been here for centuries, feeding from the land and taking care of it as our own. We were very simple people who lived a hunter-gatherer life. Our women and children were the very souls of this community, always planting and harvesting for everyone, bringing us joy with their smiles as bright as the sun. But misfortune took hold of us and would tighten its grip. Fires and droughts have filled our lands, making it near impossible to harvest our crops and feed the young. Disease spread quickly and was unforgiving. Many of us took our own lives as to not face starvation. Our children, the ones who we were supposed to protect, were dying. Succumbing to the cold winters, many of us were left weakened and unable to be cared for. We prayed and prayed until our faith ran no more. So we turned to the forest for our salvation. We made a pact with the Ancient Ones to spare our village of misfortune and darkness. This pact is not an easy one to uphold and comes with a price. We learned to become numb to others' suffering. This has been a ritual for years, and we will not stop. I'm sure you wish you had never ventured these lands. People such as yourself frequent these lands and disrupt our way of living. You bring nothing but negative influence and sickness, feeling sorry for us and trying to bring your way of living to us like we are unable to take care of our own. Year after year, you litter the very ground you walk on, and it only gets worse. I have seen so much, but I continue to my duties to keep my people alive and well, no matter the cost. You come by the many, and you come by the few. You left your home of solace. You came in search of answers to your questions, and which do not concern you. But they do now. The whispers have claimed you. You are a part of Ebonvale now, and part of its curse.